Hey, what's up, y'all? Want to make another quick video today. Today, I want to talk about signs your interviewer is just really bad at interviewing. The reason why I want to talk about this was that actually originally I wanted to make a video about rejection, overcoming rejection in the job search in general. And I realized that there's a lot of advice about things that you can do. And of course, I think that's the core component is things you can improve on, of course, consistent improvement and just having a strong will and getting through it, right? But another side of the spectrum that I think that a lot of folks don't talk about is that it, a lot of times you do just get really, really bad interviewers that aren't completely proficient on how to interview you in the first place. It's a big factor in getting a job, and unfortunately, myself included, and I think everyone out there has been through it, where they've gone through an interview and it's like it's really upsetting. Like you don't really know why you didn't get it, or you'll never get the feedback, but it felt off. It felt almost messy, that kind of thing. And today I want to talk about some of those concepts that I've discovered over the time to be able to distinguish that, mainly because, I've been on all sides of the spectrum now. I've been on the side of like creating the questions for the interviews, been the interviewer many times, been on the panels to hire, that kind of thing. And I think that this is just a unique part of it that you should understand so you can take rejection a little bit easier. Because I know for myself, right, in my earlier days, I was left with a lot of unanswered questions. And sometimes I would do really well and or do not quite that bad or do okay and just not fully understand what just happened in the scenario. And I think this is a factor for it. But I do want to emphasize that in no way that this should be an excuse or something that you should, hold over someone's head, because someone that's a bad interviewer today could get better tomorrow. It's a skill that they have to learn. And even me included, I mean, I would say that at one point I was a bad interviewer as well. And I think most people that start out are really bad at interviewing. And so just have a couple quick tips. And again, main factors to this is to help you overcome rejection, understand the full ins and outs of what happens when you do an interview, and just understand what you're dealing with. And also being able to see these things, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to be working or accepting this job, even if you do get through. Even if they do pass you, even though it was a bad interview, you should be able to see some of these signs to decide if you want the job or not, because this is someone you're working with. And so going to start this off, just a couple quick tips here. Number one, knowing how to interview itself is a skill on its own, and it's not a skill that a lot of people talk about or think about. In fact, I would even add that interviewing people is almost, if not harder than being an interviewer and, getting all that prep together. And especially as a software engineer, solving algorithms, that kind of stuff. I would say it's almost as hard as that. And the reason why I say this is because in an hour as an interviewer, it's your job to proficiently see somebody and understand if they are fit for a job, if they can communicate, if they're a good person, if they're a good culture fit, and of course, if they can do the job. And that's no easy feat, right? It's like, how many people do you know that are extremely efficient at finding friends, reading people well, that kind of thing. So now put that in an interview setting and think about how hard that is. I'm not saying that anyone needs to be perfect at that and that everyone needs to be able to read people perfectly to be an interviewer. But I think there's definitely a couple cues that you can see if someone's at least put an effort to be a good interviewer. One example that I always like to use is that, interviewing, in my opinion, I think good interviewers, they realize that you're hosting someone from an outside world. And yes, you're trying to see if they can get into your club or not, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to make your club really crappy that day. There's a difference between having good hospitality, having a good environment, and setting someone up for success to get into the club, rather than, just having them there show up and then you ask them a question, right? And so I think that's a part of experience. As you do more, if you're actually thinking about things, and of course you don't have to, right? As an interviewer, it's really easy just to be the person that's like, I don't need to worry about this. Like, you go through it, you just reject people, and you don't ever need to get better. You look at the question, did you get it? Did you not? It's like you can float by doing that. But someone that's good will keep on refining their experience that someone else has with you. And by the time you interview with them, they will at least be able to provide you a good experience in general, even if you don't do well on the question, that kind of thing. Okay, So number two, they turn the question into something that's an unrealistic situation and that could never happen in the real world. There's a difference between asking like a algorithmic question, especially in programming, versus turning it into something that can't happen. An example that I like to use is like a long time ago, I had an interview, right? Maybe one of the worst ones I've ever had is I was on a final round. They gave me a code base to find a bug in this code base. It's over an online, working environment. And the goal was like for me to find a bug in the code base. But my interviewer, so I went into the mode of like, how I would solve a problem at work. He asks questions. You try to understand the code base with the person you're working with. You trial and error, especially if this isn't an environment you're used to. But asking questions, this person kept on saying like, maybe that might work. Who knows? Sorry, I'm not going to say anything. Just figure it out, that kind of thing. And I realized that in this environment, I was like given a code base with 20 plus 30 files, right? And I was there just to look for a needle in a haystack type of thing. And that unfortunately, I mean, what does that really tell? What does that really say, right? Like in what environment do you get a brand new project? Nobody is there to help you with it. There's no docs, no previous teammates. You're just on your own, right? That's just unrealistic and doesn't really show anything. And so I think that easily happens because a lot of folks are inexperienced and they don't exactly know what they're supposed to be looking for in that question. So it turns into an unrealistic problem that they ask you that basically doesn't test for anything. Okay, number 3. They're looking for one really specific answer and they don't value anything different or anything less. An example I have is that, man, I had a really bad one a long time ago where I was interviewing for a startup a long time ago and I just could sense that the person wasn't really hearing my suggestions. It was a design question and they weren't hearing me out. And I kept on throwing at them various designs and they would just be like, nah, that doesn't really make sense, that kind of thing. And I was really confused because it was almost like I was trying to pass their narrative of how to answer the question. And at the very end, they said like my solution worked, that kind of stuff, but they hinted to me that I should read this book from back in the day, very old book for fundamental designs or whatever it may be. And that's kind of when I realized that, wow, this person has a really specific way of solving things and anything outside of that will be valued less. And I think that comes with the territory of being in a power position, that kind of thing, and having the ability just to, having the ability to not recognize that there may be more than one solution to a certain problem or not willing to hear that out. And I think that's a very common one as well. Okay, here's the very, very last one. And this is the one that I think is actually the most common. And that is that people forget how hard interviewing is and they treat it like they are the star or they are the spectator of the interview. And the example I like to use here is like when you go to a sports game, go watch NBA, NFL, whatever it may be, professional soccer. You always see people in the crowd, right? They're like screaming down into the field. They're like, come on, LeBron, or come on, Michael Jordan. Like, why didn't you make that shot? Or how did you miss that? And it's like they're up in the nosebleed acting like they could be a professional player. That happens a lot, in my opinion, during especially technical software engineering and technical interviews in general. People forget how hard it is to interview in general and how they have the answer right in front of them. And so it's like their bar that they have for you is like as if they were watching LeBron play basketball and they're also LeBron. And it's like they're judging you that you aren't getting it as well as they can, even though they've seen the question 100 times. It's easy to forget that, right? And I think that those are the most difficult ones in my opinion, because I don't personally think an interview should be like that. Someone that's experienced should, in their mind, understand how difficult this is, the pressure that this person has. And it should be, in my opinion, a good interview. That good ones that I always have and the ones that I try to give, they should be almost like a practice session with somebody, playing, practicing, seeing how we communicate with each other and seeing if we can click on that similar wavelength, that kind of thing, rather than me judging them if they can make the make it right, or hit the steps that in my head is the right steps for this question. If it's not, I'm like the one that throws my hands up. It's like, oh, this person doesn't know how to do that. So those are just a quick couple things that I think make signs that your interviewer is really bad. And again, want to say that there are a lot of great interviews out there. It's never as black and white, and just wanted to bring this out there to see if this is relatable, and of course, help ease that stress of rejection and understand that this is a part of the game, a part of the system. Just like you interviewing, interviewers are at different levels, different time frames of their interviewer career. And some people value it, some people don't value it as much. Some people are good at it, and some people are bad, and that's also a part of the grain that you're going against. So, I hope that helps. If you have any questions, would love to hear it. If not, I'll talk to you guys later.